Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have been neglecting some of our hemp news, so we have a few big hemp news stories tonight. We have a great interview with Mauricio Fiallos in Ecuador. I went down and visited Ecuador in December, and we'll be working with them on a few projects we'll be going over. But first, as we always do, let's bring on our infamous dancing cannabis lead.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first hip news story tonight is about federal rescheduling of marijuana. There's a potential of rescheduling marijuana. President Biden, who's no longer president, he ordered the government to do that. However, DEA Administrative Law Judge John Mulrooney has stayed further proceedings in the matter of marijuana's federal classification under the U.S. Controlled Substances Act, pending resolution of interlocutory appeal to the DEA's administrator. In-person testimony in the rescheduling was scheduled to begin on Tuesday, January 21st. The judge issued his order following the allegations that the Drug Enforcement Administration had engaged in inappropriate and biased acts that warranted their disqualification from the proceeding. These included allegations that the agency had conspired with opponents of the proposed rule change and that it was openly hostile to reclassifying cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, as had been recommended by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The Biden administration initiated the regulatory process to review federal cannabis scheduling in late 2022, marking the fifth time that such administrative petition to remove cannabis from Schedule 1 had been filed, but the first time that such an effort had ever been led by the White House. Well, here on an international basis, cannabis is indeed the most studied drug in the world. For the fourth consecutive year, researchers worldwide published over 4,000 scientific papers specific to cannabis, its active constituents, and their effects, according to the results of a keyword search of the National Library of Medicine's publicmed.gov website. Despite the perception that marijuana has yet to be subject to adequate scientific scrutiny, science's interest in studying cannabis has increased exponentially in the past decade, as has our understanding of the plant, its active constituents, their mechanism of action, and their effect on both the user and upon society. It's time for politicians and others to stop assessing cannabis through the lens of what we don't know, and instead start engaging in evidence-based discussions about marijuana and marijuana reform policies that are indicative of all that we do know. Over the past decade, there's been a dramatic increase in scientific inquiries about the cannabis plant, with researchers publishing more than 35,000 scientific papers about cannabis since the beginning of 2014. Much of this uptick is the result of researchers' newfound focus on marijuana's therapeutic activities, as well as investigations into real-world effects of legalization laws. In all, more than 70% of all peer-reviewed scientific papers about marijuana have been published in the past 10 years, and over 90% of this literature has been published since 2002. As of this writing, PubMed.gov cites over 49,500 scientific papers on marijuana dating back to the year 1840. Available to the public online since 1996, PubMed is a free resource supporting the search and retrieval of biomedical and life sciences literature. Our last story tonight also talks about national trends. Federally funded survey data provided by the University of Michigan reports that teen marijuana use has declined significantly over the past decade and is now at a historic low. Consistent with data previously reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, the University of Michigan's annual Monitoring the Future report finds that cannabis use by young people is at a 30-year low. In a press release issued by the National Institute on Health, Nora Valco, the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, described the overall decline in substance use by young people as, quote, unprecedented, end quote. Sensational claims that adult use legalization laws are linked with greater marijuana use by teens are simply not backed up by reliable data. These findings ought to reassure lawmakers that cannabis access can be legally regulated in a manner that's safe, effective, and that does not inadvertently impact young people's habits. Those wedded to the status quo of cannabis criminalization have long warned that legalizing the marijuana market will result in increased adolescent use. But 10 years following the first state decisions to legalize and regulate adult cannabis sales, data conclusively shows that this fear was completely unfounded. Well, that's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. If you are a loved one or looking for help finding a doctor who can recommend medical marijuana, then give us a call. We have a referral line. Please call our office at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for our interview and help us restore hemp. Good night. I'd like to reintroduce Mauricio Fiallos in Ecuador. And I just got back from Ecuador where Mauricio hosted me and did most of my translation because I know a few Spanish words, but I don't speak Spanish. But welcome back to the show, Mauricio.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so you are the founder of a nonprofit. You've lived in the United States, hence your perfect American accent. And just give us a little bit of background, please.
Of course. So I moved to the United States when I was 12 years old. So I was raised in the States. Most of my education was in Connecticut. I'm a system engineer by trade. Now it's been already 4 years that I'm back here in Ecuador, and I decided, seeing the situation, decided to form a nonprofit with a bunch of colleagues and friends. Our nonprofit pretty much works with three main points: education, investigation, and community work. Everything based around cannabis.
Uh-huh. Great. And so what's the name of your nonprofit?
The name of the nonprofit is Pro Libertad y Salud Sin Persecución, which translates to pro health and pro liberty and health without persecution.
I see. Doesn't really mention cannabis, but it's specifically focused on cannabis, correct?
Yes, it's mainly focused on cannabis. Here in Ecuador, well, fortunately, we're not allowed to touch THC, yet. So we only work with CBD, CBG, and some cannabinoids that are allowed, but not THC. However, our community of users of THC is huge. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to accomplish a space where there can be a legal framework for those people to use cannabis, THC or non-THC here in Ecuador, which unfortunately is not a legal framework yet.
So let's talk about the evolution of the cannabis laws in Ecuador. Do you know when it was first criminalized in Ecuador?
Yes, so this goes back to 2019. Was just when it got decriminalized and it became an industry, right? Now remember, at the end of 2019.
Yeah, before 2019, it was just a criminal charge for a couple, 3 generations.
Yes, so pretty much before that, there was a table in terms of the amount of cannabis you can carry, and that would lead to specific sentences, right? But it was 100% illegal. So after 2019, when they depenalized CBD only, right, and hemp, that's when it became an industry. But it's still, the laws are really not too clear when it comes to THC or auto cultivation, for that matter.
Yeah, so you were kind enough to take me out to a CBD greenhouse. We've got some pictures of it. We'll try to pop in there. And It was a garden of 420 CBD plants. And as you know, I am here in Oregon in the United States, so it was pretty neat that the variety you were growing there was Oregon cherry. Is that right?
Yeah, Cherry, Oregon. Yes.
Cherry, Oregon. Yeah. So, and that's a CBD strain that you're flowering there. You're just growing females.
Yes, so pretty much when it comes to the legal industry, we are only allowed to do CBD, and the Cherry Oregon is probably the most used gene or strain here in Ecuador. Where I took you to Chambo is a very high place near Chimborazo. We're very close to Chimborazo, and it's doing good. It's under a controlled greenhouse, and it's doing as you saw the cultivation side is doing really good.
Yeah, yeah, and I know you've got plans to expand and to do some test sites outside of the greenhouse. Is that right?
Correct. So the license that we have at that specific location allows us to do a in-ground greenhouse cultivation, 2 hectares, about 5 acres. Within that field, we're going to try to do some outdoor cultivation as well, probably for next year.
I see. I see. So, so the goals of the nonprofit are to try to legalize marijuana and help medical patients. Is that correct?
Well, yes. Well, that's one of them. So the most important thing at this point will be education. We need to find a way to teach people that, first of all, CBD is not THC. All right. That will be the first thing to do because THC is not legal. Right. But also teach them the benefits of THC. So even though it's not legal, it's not that is not good or that is bad for you. So education is probably the main focus point that we have in the nonprofit right now. To get to that point, investigation is crucial. So working with some medical teams, also universities, to allow these people to show the results of the studies when it comes to cannabis worldwide. So yes. And then again, we do have, I mean, we're in Ecuador. Unfortunately, our health system is not the best in the world, not even by any means. So there's a lot of patients that can benefit from our research. With our license number 6, we're not allowed to sell cannabis or transform it. However, we can give it away. And this is the thing that we want to do is we want to give away cannabis, whether it could be in flower or final product through our research program to these patients that don't have the means to pay for regular medicine. For example, cancer patients being one of them, epilepsy, children's, autism, all those things that we can really make a positive impact. And the main thing, teach people that this is not a bad thing. I mean, this is a healthy plant that can help in many ways.
Yeah. So, you also invited me to a cup there where I was able to sample some of Ecuador's flowers and extracts and edibles, and it was a unique setup in terms of I've judged about 25 different cups, and I've been a contestant in a few. I've won some awards at some of them, but uh, this was a team of 3 people, so it was just myself and 2 other people. It was majority women. The other 2 people were female, uh, uh, Danella and Uli, and Uli is from
Yeah,
Colombia,
Julie's
where
from Colombia. Yes.
Danella had worked for the Department of Agriculture there in Ecuador. You want to tell our audience a little bit about her background? I thought it
Sure.
was interesting.
Yes, so we had the pleasure of having you here for our fifth cup of fifth edition of Copacata Rio Nasa in Ecuador. And yes, we judged a couple of flowers there with Daniela, yourself, and Julie. Now, Daniela's background is really, really unique. She worked with the Ministry of Agriculture, one of our founder fighters when it comes to legalization of the industry itself. She worked with helping us, giving us the right pathway of laws to become an industry, right? So here in Ecuador, if you don't have a license to cultivate, you cannot cultivate or be part of the industry. So I'm so grateful for Daniela and the work that she has done, and that she's still doing, because Daniela is a major key player when it comes here for this industry. And yeah, I hope that we can have more people like her, and that she's really passionate about the cannabis. She believes in the industry, and yeah, she's a great supporter. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that she's part of this industry.
So the other unique thing is that, well, it was majority international, me being American, Julie being Colombian, and Danella. But also, it was by consensus. It was a lot of the different contests. They grade and judge various parts and points by, and then put all the numbers together. But in this case, we just kind of came to an agreement that this is the first, second, and third in 5 different categories, and that's another unique thing that I appreciated, and I liked the vibe, so to speak. So the fellow who organized it is Danilo, and
Yes.
uh, and so my kudos out to him for that. There's a beautiful location. There's one thing in Ecuador that people haven't been to Ecuador don't know about, and it's the problem with power. And so that's been going on. When did the cut in power really start on a regular basis?
So starting yesterday, 2 days ago, on the 20th of December, the government announced that there will be no more blackouts.
Oh, that,
So so hopefully we can continue on that trend, and this situation with blackouts is a thing of the past. However, it's been so many months, and it is a struggle for everyone, because they're not programmed blackouts. I mean, one week you can have a 3-hour blackout, the next week could be 8 hours. It got up to 14 hours. So imagine if you have an indoor, or even if you have an industrial site, you needed to have power generators. If not, your flowers would just go straight to flowering. I mean, it was tough. And with those circumstances, we did have some decent competitors. I mean, the flowers that you guys judge, they were really good. Danilo Ramos, on that sense, a pioneer when it comes to cups. I mean, he's been holding this cup together for 5 years now, 5th edition, and this is the reason why he tries to always make things a little bit different, you know. And like he says, because he's been a judge himself, international judge. So what he was telling me is it's difficult when they just give you a sheet of paper and says put numbers, and then you got to go through 25 or 30 different strings. By the time you see all the strings, the numbers kind of always stay the same, right? So what he did this time is a smaller judge, 3 judges, right? You guys see, you go through the samples and you see the quality of the samples, and then based on everybody's judgment, you decide which ones you actually want to taste or you want to try, and that's the key point, because you maybe see 25, 30 different samples, but your experience is going to allow you to really test the 5 or the 6 that are unique.
yeah. And that's what we did. There weren't that many edible contestants. There were a lot more than 3, but I think in the end we tested 7 extracts and 8 or 9 flowers, and announced, came to a pretty amicable, friendly agreement on what was the best, second, third, and fourth. So yeah, that was a unique experience in those 2 ways, So I appreciate that. And I got to go into go to Quito for the first time, Rio Bamba, and then up to Chimborazo. So a lot of people don't realize that Chimborazo, when measured from the center of the earth, is actually the tallest mountain on Earth. It's not the tallest mountain when measured from sea level, but there's an equatorial bulge to the Earth. It's not a perfect sphere. So Chimborazo is somewhat taller than Mount Everest when it comes to the center of the Earth. And I went up to about 16,000 feet on that. I got to say, I had trouble breathing in Quito and Rio Bamba, which are both close to 10,000 feet elevation. But I really had trouble breathing when I got up to 16,000. I'd been one place before in Peru that was about 17,000 feet some years before, but anyway, but I'm glad I went. It was an amazing place, even though the clouds came and went. I saw some glimpses of the glaciers up there. But so you had asked me to and funded me to start a new nonprofit here in the United States and a new nonprofit corporation, and I agreed to do so. And so, do you want to tell our audience about those plans?
Well, I mean, you have to understand that for us being here in Ecuador, we really don't have that much of experience when it comes to get to that, how to get to that point of legalization, how to free up the plant, how to help as many people as we can. So definitely the best way to do that is reaching out people like you and other guys that have done this more for a longer period of time that can really help us, you know. And we also understand that it's tough for someone in the United States to give us a hand when the nonprofit is not in the United States, right? So this is the reason why, you know, we came together with the founders, with the guys from the nonprofit, and we, you know, we yes, we're funding this adventure because we think that this is the way to really make that impact, that social impact with cannabis and with the laws when it comes to cannabis, because the more people can join this project, the stronger the project could be.
And so, you hope to bring in some nonprofit tax deductible donations to help the work in Ecuador. And that's the focus of our new nonprofit.
Correct. Definitely, experienced professionals. One of the biggest things that really are hurting the industry here in Ecuador is that we need to have doctors that have a degree in medicine that can come to our doctors here in Ecuador that do not believe in cannabis or they don't want to hear about cannabis, but to say, listen, cannabis is good for this illnesses or for this type of treatments, and this is the proven fact, right? Danilo Ramos, for example, he holds a medical degree, you know, in cannabis, right? But unfortunately, doctors here in Ecuador, let's talk about maybe oncologists, right? Or psychiatrists, right?
Your father is an oncologist there in Rio Bamba. And so this is an intergenerational educational experience as well, right?
Correct. My father, yes, my father is an oncologist. You know, he's a medical doctor, a surgeon, and yes, he doesn't believe in cannabis. You know, and it's tough. And as a matter of fact, when I speak to doctors, I come from a family of doctors. So when I speak to my family or fellow members of the family, and I tell them about cannabis, they don't, you know, they need to hear from other doctors, and this is one of the reasons why also I call for nonprofits in the United States that have Spanish speaking doctors to give us a hand, to come down to Ecuador and to really train our doctors and to teach our doctors the benefits of cannabis.
Right. And so our plan is to try to do that in Ecuador. You know, obviously, I've had experience in growing and giving away free cannabis. I've given away about 3 tons or 7,000 pounds of free cannabis over the past 25 years, and most of it up to 2017, and a lot smaller amount since then, since my resources have been somewhat limited since then. But I still do grow my own and give away what I can. Um, so that's one thing I have experience with, and obviously, I have experience working with doctors, and so and I still work with doctors, helping medical marijuana patients here in Oregon and Washington. So the idea of coming there to help just seems natural to me and a blessing. Uh, so we're starting this new nonprofit to try to set up some medical conferences for doctors and to allow you to get to the point where you can give medicine to the sick and dying patients.
Of course, and also educational training. I mean, if if we can have universities, if we can have medical programs that would like to work with us and do medical research, I know this is something that we can actually also try to do. The laws here in Ecuador when it comes to medical research are a lot more leeway than they are in the United States. So that's also another key factor, maybe an interesting factor for some nonprofits in the United States that might want to look into. Um, and yes, I mean, the main thing is to help people with cannabis, give away as much as we can, get our license number 6 in multiple locations throughout Ecuador. So we can really do that research and see the different how the specific strain changes from location to location. Remember, Ecuador is one of the only places in the world where you within 5 6 hours your climate will change completely, right? So you and also not only your climate but also your altitude. So definitely is a heaven when it comes for research and investigation.
Mhm. And Ecuador includes part of the Amazon basin too. I haven't been to that part. I know you had uh, started an entity called Selva Cannabis, and Selva in Spanish means jungle. Um, is that still ongoing? Or I know,
Yes, we still have Selva going. Yes, that's also, but that's more like a private company, you know. So we do more consulting through Selva, and also product resale through Selva. So um, yes, Selva means jungle, and the reason why when we put together this company, one of the main reasons is the behavior of what cannabis did in the jungle. So, for example, we had a CBG strain. And with the benchmark and the paperwork that we got from the state was about 18% CBD output. And on our first test runs, we got up to 24, 25% CBD, right? So in the Amazons, there's something really particular that happens because of the weather, the humidity. The terpenes were completely different from what we got in the spec sheet. So again, it's an amazing place to do research. And the Amazons themselves, they have so many flowers and so many unique vegetation, that yes, it will definitely be something to look for in terms of investigation and research.
so at the high altitude, obviously the extra UV radiation is going to bring out more plant oils and resins, most likely. So, did you notice that
Yeah.
in the Amazon?
So yeah. So here's a funny thing. When we first started, when we first started with the cultivation here in Ecuador, that was a main problem that we had, and it's because THC levels would skyrocket because of that. All right. So you can have a strain that has less than 1% of THC, and because it receives so much UV rays and all these other things for altitude, it will switch. It will jump to 2 3% THC. So yes, again, when THC is legal in Ecuador, it's definitely something to look for because that our flowers will probably have the strongest content of THC around the world. So it's definitely something to look for once THC becomes legal here in Ecuador.
Yeah, where we were at in Riobamba and Quito are both pretty close, over 9,000, close to 10,000 feet in elevation. And so in America, there aren't many places you can go up to at that elevation, and drive and have people living. Of course, being on the equator, it's still a pretty cool climate at that elevation. It's not super cold, but obviously when you get up to Chimborazo, there are glaciers there, so it's going to be cold year round. But you're not going to be growing up there. So
We
the
never know.
well, I didn't see much soil when we went up there. It was all volcanic rock and ash and things. It's probably going to erupt again. You never know when. I guess geologists say it last erupted 1,500 years ago or so. So it's probably going to happen again, but hopefully it won't destroy too much of our human infrastructure and everything.
Wow,
So
Chimborazo is a huge volcano. God forbid he ever activates and erupts. I mean, he will probably wipe out. Pretty much the entire country.
Well, you can see where it went before. We have a pretty tall volcano up in Washington State called Mount Rainier, and it had had flows that covered what's now the city of Tacoma. So when that happens, and it's these things are going to happen at some point. Same with earthquakes. But back to the cannabis situation there. So you, if you with your licenses, would you be able to cultivate anything outside of CBD? Maybe grow CBC or cannabichromene or CBG, cannabidiol, which is the mother cannabinoid. There's been a lot of patients in our clinics, and uh, that these are very, very effective. And one patient was saying how CBC had really solved all of her problems to me just a week and a half or so ago. So, what is the ability using your licensing and legality there to produce those other compounds?
So here's the thing. When it comes to industrial cultivations, the Ecuador needs to change a lot of the regulations when it comes to new strains, right? It takes a long time for a strain to come through the country, get approved, and get that certificate for industrial cultivations. So that's an obstacle, right? However, with the nonprofit, we can do the research through our nest investigation license number 6, right? And because we're not selling the cannabis, we're giving it away, right? We can get to that final patient quicker, right? So yes, CBD, CBG, CBC, anything except THC, we are allowed to cultivate as research and investigation. So this is one of the benefits for the nonprofit is that through our license, we can get to that patient quicker than it will with the regular licenses for industrial use. However, if we need to come up with an industrial cultivation site, that usually takes about 18 months to get that strain authorized and certified here in Ecuador for industrial cultivation. So it's an obstacle. But yes, we can do it. With the legal framework, yes, we can actually get to that point quicker to patients.
So you could take those strains on an experimental trial basis and then build up, get after apparently a year and a half process, be able to grow them on a much larger basis.
Right. Yes, especially having some sort of experimental base with medical institutions and universities. Definitely that helps, and that's something that we already have. Spoch, UNACH, those are universities in Riobamba that are very interested when it comes to cannabis. University of Bolivar, for example, was the first university with license number 6 in Ecuador. And those guys, I give kudos to those guys because they're really, really strong when it comes to research. And I know they keep growing. I know they have a license 6, not license 5. Amazing work that those guys are putting in University of Bolivar.
So in Ecuador, you have these different licenses, license 6, 5. What other license numbers and what specifically does each license enable the holder to do?
All right. So pretty much in Ecuador, there's 7 licenses, right? License number 6 will allow you to import seeds. You can import and you can sell seeds, right? License number 2, which is what we have here in El Azuay, we manage a license number 6. I mean, a license number 2, where I'm located. That allows us to do import of seeds and also clones, right? So we can sell clones and import seeds. License number 3 is industrial cultivation. That's what you saw in Tambo, right? Chambo has a license number 3, right? License number 4 is for outdoor cultivation and more for hemp. You know, that's the project that we're running in Machala, which is an outdoor hemp cultivation sites for textile and for seeds for nutritional cultivation, right? So then we go to license number 5, which that's our lab. We have to make sure that if we want to have a final product, we need to go through a license number 5 holder, right? License number 6 is the research and investigation and educational license. And then license number 7, that's the broker. That's the guy who can go in between all the licenses and buy and sell and trade. All the licenses allow you to export, right? However, the export market is very tough because we're not to that point yet. When
Yeah.
it comes to
Well, what?
cannabis, there's other countries that are more ahead of us.
Yeah, Colombia has jumped ahead in many ways there. But Ecuador definitely needs to catch back up. And I in judging the samples that were given, I noticed some of the samples, some of the winners were from Colombia. So it wasn't just an Ecuadorian contest. So how many of those licenses are you working with right now?
License number 3 in Chambo, license number 4 in Machala, license number 2 in Aswai, and we're trying to get a license number 6 with a university. So right now, 4 license out of the 7, and the goal will be to manage all 6 different licenses, however, in different locations. We did we tried to do it once in one location, and it's not the most efficient way, because it's a different business for every license, and it's in a specific investment and operational cost for each specific license. So it's impossible that one site can manage all 6 licenses. It's just not feasible.
So I know in Chambo, you're a consultant. That's not actually held by your nonprofit, but you brought in an expert cultivator there.
Yes. So license number 3, we consulting.
They had
Um,
failed one year. Their consultant wasn't accurate, so they brought you in to kind of clean up and save the day.
Yeah, so license number, so Chambo was a unique situation. We went in to fix a problem with a previous consulting firm that really did a lot of damage to that cultivation site. So we're there. Nicolas Castillo, which is one of our growers, he does an amazing job of following up and keeping those plants really healthy. So yes, Chambo is one of our consulting sites, as well as some other guys that will also do consulting around Ecuador. Um, I think it's for the best. It's good to work in different climates and different locations to really feel the difference between all the different strains that we have.
Uh-huh. That's wise. That's wise. So, what is the next plan that we're going to implement?
So the next plan is for me, for Mauricio, and for the nonprofit is to focus 100% in getting the project of the nonprofit off the ground internationally. And we're so glad and thankful for you and with you to give us that helping hand to get everything started. We really, I'm going to focus with the nonprofit. I'm actually have talked to some of the owners of the other companies, and I'm going to step away from the private sector and focus myself when it comes to the nonprofit. I think there's so much work that we can do, so many people we can help, in the most important thing, so many minds we can touch when it comes to education. So the nonprofit is all that, and I'm very passionate about what we do in the nonprofit, and I think I'm going to concentrate 100% there, and that's the next step. We want to make sure that the nonprofit makes the transition, international transition for this 2025.
Mhm. Well, I'm happy to help attempt to make that happen, and I think we have some doctors here that be interested. I can only think of one, doesn't actually work directly with me anymore, who is a native Spanish speaker, but uh, translation can be done too, in terms of bringing knowledge to transferring knowledge from one language to another. So,
Awesome.
um, so let's go a little bit more into your background. I'm interested in cannabis. This is something we ask everybody, and I think I told you I first used cannabis at a babysitter's house in Dallas, Texas, and her son had just got back from Vietnam in 1972 when I was about 11, and that was my introduction. And I just remember it made me laugh a lot. Anyway,
Uh,
So,
how did,
so this goes back. Okay, so pretty much I will have to say that everything started when I was in high school, right?
Mhm.
I had a lot of friends that they use cannabis. Myself, I used a little bit of cannabis back in high school, right? So it went back to our fifth year reunion when we had this high school reunion, and I see a friend of mine that now lives in Colorado, right? And he was kind of the guy, the chill guy, back, really laid back. And he comes in as an entrepreneur with cannabis, and I caught my attention because everything that he was doing, I thought that was amazing, right? Let's fast forward 10 years, no more, 20 years. Now I'm here in Ecuador, right? And the industry just started 2019, and I met Danilo Ramos. Danilo Ramos is a very, very key element when it comes with me to this to the cannabis introduction here in Ecuador.
and he was
So
the
he's
organizer of Copa Catarinosa, the contest I just
correct.
came from.
Correct. So when he comes to me, he gives me the documents that they were going to present to the government to make this happen, because he was one of the major players or activisms to make that happen, right? So I started reading and I say, well, this could be an industry, this could be a thing. Looking at the experience that took place in the United States and how everything blossomed in the United States, well, it was only natural to me to join this project. So I started working with cannabis since it got legalized here in Ecuador. So 2019, 2020, pandemic really hit everyone. So it was a time for us to come to get together. We form an organization of cannabis growers, and we've been working since then. I mean, it's been a nonstop up and downs, a lot of errors, big mistakes, money mistakes. We have lost money, um, but it's a learning curve. I mean, it's unfortunately, but when something is new and you don't have that much of experience, it's going to cost you.
Right, right. Well, made the effort, and I hope I can help save a little bit. I've been working at it my whole life, so I've got some degree of expertise, I guess. But let's tell our audience a little bit about the recent historical political environment of Ecuador. Ecuador has had some upheavals lately. I know last year there was some prison breakout in near Guayaquil that took over a TV station or something. I guess that scared off some people. But how did it get to that stage, and where are we now?
Okay, so yeah, Ecuador, when it comes to the political side, is a little bit tough. I mean, there's a lot of people we can blame. I'm not into politics by no means. All I can say is that it needs to always, usually, for a situation to get good, it needs to get worse or it needs to get bad. All right. Ecuador came from a place where we didn't know how much corruption we had within our government, within our police departments, within our law system. Um, and all of a sudden, everything just came to light, right? And when that happens, people lose their minds. There's a lot of violence. There's people that are about to lose power and control. They don't want to give it away. Now there's new players like the president Novoa, who I believe is doing his best. Again, I don't take any political sides. All I can see is, all I can say is that he tries his best, right? But when the country, it was so bad left behind with so many corruption, you can't change it in one period of time. He's been a year. It's been a lot of things changing for the positive, and there's people that thinks that it's tough. Electricity wise, for example, the blackouts, that's something that came from the past, but again, the government also has some fault. It's just that he inherit a government with so many problems: security, financials, violence, organized crime, that yes, he messed up on the planification of the electricity. By no means should I give him an excuse. There was not enough planification. But then again, we suffer as people. We're the ones who had to suffer. From where we go from now, that's the key factor. We're going into presidential elections on February of 2025. This was again, President Noboa has only been in power for I think a little bit over a year, right? So all depends on this upcoming elections on 2025 to see really where we going. Hopefully, we go to a better place. That's just the hope as any citizen in a country that is just hoping always for the best.
That's what we have to do as humans. We've got to deal with the problems as they come, but work for the best as we see it. But I'm excited to be involved to some degree there. I had a great time while I was there as well. So I thank you for that. That was my second time to go and judge a cup. I had judged the La Perla Cup out in Guayaquil a couple of years ago. And so it was good to be back there. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they do that?
All right, so probably will be the phone number. I mean, I can give you the phone number, or you can put it down as 0939116101. That's our number for the nonprofit. We can also reach out through our websites, prolibertadisalud.org. That's our websites. And again, for social media, we usually post stuff on social media, TikTok, Instagram. Pro Libertad y Salud. Those are the names that you can look for. We're going to be in all different locations. As a matter of fact, there's a huge festival next month here in Azuay, Valle Yunguilla Fest, 17, 18, and 19 of January. So we're going to be there as well with the nonprofit to talk about legalization, give away some seeds, give away some clones, teach people how to cultivate. Those are the things that we want to do and that we're doing. And yeah, that will be probably the easiest way to reach out and to join the project. Get as many people as we can involved. That's the main goal for now for this year.
All right. Well, that's a good thing. Is there anything else you'd like to address?
Yes, actually, one big thing. I mean, I would like to. There's been so many players and so many people that have helped us throughout these times. Carlos de los Bos, for example, Selva Cannabis. He's been a strong advocate for us, very big, helping us with so many things. Nancy Shuguli, my aunt, who believes in the cannabis project, who doesn't give away. She doesn't fade out, even though things go up and down. My family, so workers. I mean, our team. You met Danilo, you met Nicolas. There's Marcos, for example, and Ibarra. I mean, there's a lot of people that keeps helping us. And again, this is the reason why I know that if we got to this point with the amount of people that we have touched and we have reached, I can't imagine where we can be in a couple of years when we go international and we can join more professionals into this project.
What are the likelihood that THC will be legalized or regulated?
It's just a matter of time, Paul. I mean, it's just literally just like any other country. It's a matter of time. I think that Ecuador probably will be, I want to say, anywhere between 3 to 4 years. The new government has to come into place. Like I told you, there's elections on 2025 February. I think the government will take maybe 1 or 2 years to get the main priority problems fixed, and then cannabis will probably come up after that. So if I want to give it a timeline, I say 4 years. But within those 4 years, remember, with a license number 6, we can do research, we can do investigation, we can do education. So when THC becomes legal, we're ahead of the game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to come there and look forward to what we can do more in the future. So we have a little bit of time left. Maybe I could pop in some videos or something from our little visit there. But there is I can't think of any more questions right now. So what about you?
Well, having you here, Paul, in Ecuador was amazing. we haven't even touched the pack of the industrial part. I know you're expert when it comes to paper. Machala, for example, is a very key point for maybe hemp, for fiber, plastic, and paper. There's I know we have talk about probably the nonprofit when it comes to medicinal use, but there's also the industrial use, because remember, having the way where can people can make a living, a decent living, is also an interesting thing to do. So for example, agriculture, when it comes to people, like for example with banano, that sometimes can't even make the minimum cost of production, right? Pitahaya, for example, dragon fruit. Today there was in the news where a community in Manabi just lost $50 million when it comes to production of dragon fruit. And it's a shame, because if you go to the supermarkets in the United States, you see one dragon fruit for $6, right? And here in Ecuador, 1 kilo of dragon fruit, they don't want to pay these agricultures and these people that work so hard no more than 50 cents a kilo, right? So those are the things that also we look into with the nonprofit, is to help these communities through hemp, right? Change their cultivation cycles, and make a decent living. I mean, for someone that just went through all these blackout problems, all these insecurity issues, to lose your entire crop because they don't want to pay you not even enough to cover your basic necessities, is a shame. Again, that's also something that we're looking to do, is show people a different way of cultivation. Hemp could be a thing. Hemp could do so many things: plastic, paper, and this time do something different. Let's break that middleman. Let's not create middlemen. Let's teach people how to reach to the final markets, or transform their cultivation crops into a final product. So things like this news that just took place yet today, I just read in the paper, $50 million in Manabi was lost because 50 cents a kilo for something that in the States you pay $6 per fruit is a shame.
Well, another thing is the banana crop there. There's been a virus in the Cavendish bananas, and that's the main banana that's sold. So slowly but surely, those banana plants, and Ecuador is a major banana and plantain producer. So it's hitting the
Yes.
farmers there.
Yeah, so for example, I work with the Agriculture Center of Machala, Ingeniero Ortiz, who's also a very strong fighter for the rights of farmers. And yes, they're concerned. They're concerned because they have already wiped out a lot of acres of land, hundreds of acres of land with this virus. And yeah, there's no way to fix it. And unfortunately, that's one of the downfalls when it comes to single crop cultivation. Yeah, if you only cultivate one thing in cycle after cycle, it will come to the point where the land just doesn't want to give you anymore, and that's it. And then these viruses can wipe out entire acres of cultivation.
So I know we also, when I was there, talked about growing fiber hemp in a remediation to clean up some of the mining sites. Ecuador is a major, well, all of the Andes are a major mining source of key metals and minerals. And so we talked a little bit about how that could work out too.
Yeah, again, through investigation research. Activated carbon, right, is a major component for mining, right? Now, again, I have reached out to a lot of miners. Again, this done through the Mauricio Ortiz. This guy is amazing when it comes to farmer rights, and we have reached out communities and find out ways where we can put hemp to help mining. Yeah, activated carbon is something that we would like to do research. We would like to find ways to remediate the damage that mining does to the nature, right? And yes, also cultivating hemp above these mining fields or these mining sites is a thing that we're going to try to do. And this is the reason why, again, reaching out from people with more expertise that can give us a hand is what we're looking for. We know the problem. We just have to find the solution. And to find the solution, we have to talk to the right people, the people with experience to get to that solution.
So yeah, it's a shame. I'm glad that well, it's a shame you've been dealing with the electrical problems on and off there for so long. It was quite, and I'd heard about it before I got there and got to experience it. I'm happy. So it's just since yesterday that they announced they weren't going to do that anymore.
Yeah, the December 20th. It says that was the first day without blackouts.
I see. So now, you know, Ecuador is an oil exporter, right? So there's really no reason that some of that oil couldn't power the electrical grid there. But a lot of it was based on drought and hydropower. Is that correct?
Yes, so yes, we have the way. Yes, we have oil. We have but unfortunately we don't generate, our electricity is not generated by oil. Is mostly generated by hydropower plants. And when there's this type of droughts and our, our conventional or thermoelectric plants were not kept up to the standards, this is what happened, right? So again, planification. There was definitely a lack of planification. So we depended so much on hydropower, and those were the consequences. To be honest, Paul, I won't be surprised that if by January, when we talk again, I'm going to tell you that we have blackouts again. All right, it's just because it is a massive problem that takes time to fix. I know that right now we don't have any blackouts, but it's because of political issues too. Nobody, Christmas, New Year's.
While I was there, it was raining most every day. So obviously, the wet season's going to help solve the drought and the hydropower. But when is the dry
Yes.
season?
March, we turn around, and then March, we're probably going to start having the same problem if we don't have it before then.
Well, I hope you don't. I hope you don't. Well, I really appreciate you coming on our show here and inviting me there. I had a great trip. I look forward to going back in the future. Had Mauricio Fiallos here. Anything you want to say? Last words, Mauricio?
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the time. And yes, we look forward to have you again with those medical teams to really make that positive impact when it comes to cannabis education here in Ecuador. Thank you again for your time and for the ability of coming in here and spending some time with us.
Hey, you're very welcome. Happy holidays and help restore hemp.
Thank you, Paul. Happy holidays again. Yes, let's do that.